Chapter 7, Rat Man. We were all thinking about enormous pink elephants wearing tutus, holding little umbrellas, and singing, John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith. Mr. Cooper told us he would be back in a minute, and he stepped out of the room. Me and Michael and Ryan got up and shook our butts at the class. Everybody laughed, except for Andrea and Emily, who just rolled their eyes. A minute later, Mr. Cooper came running back into the room. This time he almost knocked over the computer in the corner, and he fell down again. Man, for a superhero, Mr. Cooper falls down a lot. He was wearing a different costume this time. There was a big R on his cape. He also had a wedge of cheese hanging off of his belt. That was weird. Behold, he announced, I am Ratman. Ratman? I said. I thought you were Cooper Man. That must have been some other guy, said Mr. Cooper. I am Ratman, and I have come to teach you about rats. What? Rats? Why do we have to learn about rats? Andrea asked. I think rats are disgusting. No, they're not, said Mr. Cooper as he stepped into the hallway and came back with a big cage in his hand. Rats are fascinating animals. Eek! Screamed all of the girls except for Alexia. He has live rats! Gross! Cool, yelled all the boys and Alexia. Male rats are called bucks, Mr. Cooper said as he took one of the rats out of the cage and petted it. Females are called does, and babies are called kittens or pups. But I call this one Wilbur. Yes, it is. The girls were freaking out, but Wilbur didn't seem all that scary to me. Mr. Cooper told us that rats are smart, friendly, and social. When a rat gets sick, its rat friends will even take care of it. He told us lots of other neat stuff about rats, too. Do you want to pet Wilbur? Asked Mr. Cooper. No! Shouted all the girls. Yes! Shouted all the boys. Oh, come on, said Mr. Cooper. I bet at least one of the girls must be brave enough to pet Wilbur. I'll do it, said little Miss Perfect, who will do anything to impress a teacher. Andrea scrunched up her eyes, and Mr. Cooper carefully put Wilbur in her hands. See? Wilbur really likes you, said Mr. Cooper. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the whole world happened. Andrea must have twitched or something, because Wilbur jumped off her hand. He landed on the floor, and he ran away. Eek! Shouted everybody. Everybody shrieked. Wilbur ran towards the back of the room. Calm down, everyone, said Mr. Cooper. Please calm down. There's a loose rat in the class. Run for your lives. We were all freaking out. It was just a rat. What's the big deal? I'll get him, said Andrea. Everybody was running around like the earth had just been hit by an asteroid or something. Half the class was chasing Wilbur, and the other half of the class was running away from him. Finally, Andrea and I cornered Wilbur in the corner. Well, if you're going to corner something, it should be in a corner. That's the first rule of cornering stuff. Wilbur looked at Andrea. Wilbur looked at me. Put your lunchbox over him, Arlo, said Andrea. She calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it. I'm not putting my lunchbox over a rat, I told her. Why don't you put your lunchbox over him? I don't have my lunchbox here today, Andrea said. I'm buying lunch in the vomitorium. Well, use your pencil case, I told Andrea. I'm not putting my pencil case over a rat, she replied. Why don't you use your pencil case? We went back and forth like that for a while. Wilbur was still cornered in the corner. He looked nervous. And you'll never believe who walked into the door at that very moment. Nobody. It would hurt if you walked into a door, and you'll never believe who walked into the doorway. It was Mr. Klutz. How are you kids making out? He asked. Hey, Grudge! so everybody started choking and gagging because Mr. Klutz had said making out again. We're learning about rats, said Mr. Cooper, but one of them seems to have escaped. You brought live rats to school with you? Asked Mr. Klutz. Are you out of your mind, Mr. Cooper? Is this any way to teach the children? Sure it is, Mr. Cooper replied. See, AJ and Andrea are totally engaged. Ooh, Ryan said. AJ and Andrea are engaged. When are you two going to get married? Asked Michael. If those guys weren't my best friends, I'd hate them. Chapter 8, The Attack of the Super Librarian. After 1,100,000 hours, we were able to capture Wilbur the rat and get him back inside his cage. Okay, it's time for math, said Mr. Cooper. No, not math, anything but math. Why do we have to learn math? Isn't that why they invented calculators? I love math, said Andrea. Math is fun. What is her problem? Why can't a truck full of math books just fall on her head? I wanted to go to Antarctica and live with the penguins. That was the worst thing to happen since TV turnoff week. Turn to page 23 in your books, said Mr. Cooper. Does anybody have any questions? I do, I said. How old are rocks? Who was the first person to drink milk from a cow? Why don't we have fall and spring Olympics? And who invented sandpaper? What color is the White House? Math questions, AJ, said Mr. Cooper. Do you have any questions about math? Yeah, I said. Why do we have to learn math? Mr. Cooper looked mad. I think he was going to say something mean to me, but he never got the chance, because you'll never believe who ran into the door at that very moment. Nobody. You'd have to be crazy to run into a door. I thought we went over that already, but anyway, you'll never believe who ran into the doorway. It was a lady dressed up in a superhero costume. She had a big L on her cape. She was wearing a mask over her eyes, but she looked a lot like our librarian, Mrs. Rupee. Oh no, shouted Mr. Cooper. My arch enemy is here. What do you have against arches? I asked. Everybody laughed, even though I didn't think I said anything funny. It is I, announced the lady as she struck a superhero pose.